a presentation by Dr. Bruce Benson, Superintendent of Schools. And we're reinstituting an old process where we had the superintendent come over and brief us from time to time, monthly or whatever we thought was a good regular schedule. And I talked to Dr. Benson about this a week or so ago, and he graciously agreed to re-engage us on this. And I think it's a good, positive move, and I'm happy you could make it today, sir.
And I do appreciate the opportunity. Chairman Cavalier, Vice Chair Snellings, members of the board, Mr. Romanello. I think it's a great way for us to work on that communication piece. And it is my 3-month anniversary, Mr. Snellings, today, right? I was up speaking to the North Stafford Rotary this morning, and we were talking a little bit about longevity, and one of the members noted that I might not have to be here very long to eclipse that maximum time. I said, well, it's kind of a low bar, so we'll certainly work on that. But I continue to be excited about being here. I think we have some wonderful opportunities ahead of us. We have a really good school system. I think there are things that we can do to improve a number of issues within the division, but we have a really good school system, and that's something that I want to kind of help us build on with your support. And again, the purpose of me coming today is to have an opportunity to share some information with you all as to some of the things that we are looking at on the school division side. I do appreciate the opportunity that I had to meet with each of you on an individual basis, as well as ongoing meetings with Mr. Romanello. I think that was very helpful in gaining some insight and trying to improve communication. And I think that, one thing that's really important moving forward is that, the facts are the facts. So when we talk about a level of funding or staffing levels within the division, would very much like us to get to the point where we're pretty confident about the numbers that we're sharing, and that we're not entitled to our own facts. The facts are the facts. Everyone gets an opinion, and we respect that, and that's an opportunity for us to engage in some dialogue as to what might be the best thing for us to go after in the future. But we're going to work real hard to make sure that information that we have out there is as correct as it can possibly be. And I do recognize that we've had a little bit of rough going in the past few years. And I hesitate to use this slide, given that Arthur's getting churned up off the coast of Florida. And maybe this next analogy, which is that perfect storm analogy. And that didn't end well for the Andrea Gale. I'm hoping for a more positive outcome, because what it really is about is channeling energy in a positive way. Sometimes we have control over that, sometimes we don't. I'm hopeful that we're going to be in a position to have some degree of control in channeling that energy, and that we're looking at a positive outcome. But I do think that we're at a unique point, a transition point, that's going to create some really great opportunities for us moving forward, and I'm excited about that. I'm excited about working not only with the school board, but also with Mr. Romanello and you as supervisors to see what we can do to better serve the citizens of the community. Part of the rough going has had to do with this, our slice of the pie, as some folks might characterize it. And that may be an issue. I don't know. I mean, I don't know enough at this point about how we're using available resources to be able to say that it's about the size of the slice. Sometimes it's about the size of your plate, or the number of things that you have on your plate. If you have the right size plate, the slice of the pie that you have might be just the right size. We need to do a good job at looking to see what we have on our plate and making sure that they are the right things, and the things that are going to produce the desired results for the division. I think one of the things that school systems are pretty good at doing is adding things, adding programs. I mean, we certainly want to provide as many opportunities as we possibly can for our young people. We're not so good, though, at doing the evaluation that really needs to go along with that implementation, and really not good at trying to take things off that plate when there's a need to do that. We do want to try and improve our transparency here moving forward, though, and we are going to take a really serious look at our current resources and how we are allocating them, and to talk about what's important. One of the challenges I think we'll have is that we're going to need to do some prioritizing. And if everything is important, what you're really saying is nothing is important. And there are some things that I think we do really well as a school division. I think there are some things that we're going to need to improve moving forward. And I will tell you, one of the things I think we do really well is provide an outstanding experience for our young people in our classrooms throughout the division. I've had an opportunity to visit every one of our elementary schools, middle schools, and high schools prior to students being released for summer. And I've seen some incredible things occurring in our classrooms, whether it's the visual and performing arts, our academic classrooms, extracurricular opportunities, career and technical opportunities. I mean, we really have a lot going on that is positive, and I think well preparing our students for the future. So it might not be surprising to you then that the board has identified 3 areas that are kind of more of foundational areas for consideration. We recently had an off-site work session at the hospital, and we talked about a large number of items that the board would like us to take a look at in this coming year, and I really asked them to try and narrow it down to 3 areas in particularly, so that when we go to set goals for myself, that I have a little bit more clearly defined set of goals, so that I can be in a position hopefully to deliver on those goals. And those 3 are compensation, benefits, budget development and alignment, and evaluation of countywide programs. And we have some work to do there. We really need to take a good look at our salary scales, and I'm going to say a little bit more about that in a minute, as well as how we are packaging our benefits and how we compare to other school divisions. Improving our budget documentation, increasing clarity, ensuring that what we're going after is aligned with our vision, mission, and goals, I think will be an important part of improving the budget process. And then some evaluation of countywide programs. The board is asking questions as to whether or not we have some overlapping programs, as an example, and that goes to that plate piece, examining what is on our plate and making sure that we're getting desired results. And if there is overlap in programs, then that might be something that we want to consider doing differently in the future. So what we're proposing, and what I'm proposing, is a level of analysis that perhaps we have not done previously, looking at our allocation of resources, but also how other divisions that might be similar to us are allocating their resources. So we're going to look both internally and externally, and take a look at how we compare. The school board recently adopted 9 comparison divisions that we're going to use as part of that comparison. There are 6 of those that the local government uses as comparison counties, and we added a few more. We think that some of these divisions have some innovative programs that we should consider. We think that a couple of them have done an exceptional job with growth in their county, and I think that's something that we need to be paying attention to. All but 2 of them have AAA bond ratings in the county, and which again is something that I think that we're striving to achieve. And this one is really kind of interesting to me. There are 4 in the mix, and I think board members have a spreadsheet that has some information about each one of the school divisions that you have at your places. 4 of them have per pupil expenditures that are close to our per pupil expenditure. And I think that's kind of interesting because there are some things that are different about these divisions, including their compensation models. Their scales in some cases are better than our scales are for teachers, yet their per pupil expenditures are comparable. Mr. Sterling.
These are the communities that you want to use as the comparables? I just want to make sure I'm understanding.
That's correct. The board adopted these as a comparison group.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
And maybe this is in the sub area, but is that per pupil expenditure factoring in the debt, the capital cost, annual reoccurring?
I'm not sure, Mr. Mildy. I'll have to check on that.
All right. If it's not, I'd be interested in seeing this exactly.
Whether or not they have.
I'd like to see what it looks like if you did the same list with factoring in debt. Yeah.
Certainly, and we pulled these numbers off of the I think it was the state report from the fall. Let's say it's number 7. There's a footnote. It's Superintendent's annual report for Virginia. So we have to go back and look at how they determine those numbers, but we certainly can do that. In any case, we'll have a comparison group, and we're hopeful to be able to do as much as we can an apples to apples comparison. There will be some challenges when we do this. For example, as we begin to look at compensation, I'd like to show you some work that was done by one of these divisions, Albemarle, a few years ago, in looking at salaries. And so this was part of a presentation that the joint boards in Albemarle received in the fall prior to the budget work based to take a look at teacher compensation. Albemarle has a group of school divisions that it uses as comparison, and it has a goal for compensation to be at least in the bottom of the top quartile of their comparison group. And that's what that aqua bar represents, the range of salaries for the school divisions that are in the top quartile. The little blue dash in there is where Albemarle's compensation is for that number of years of experience. And you can see that as you go across years of experience, and they've done it for every year of experience. I've only included the 5, 10, 15 years and such. They do it for every year. There are some places where they're in the market, and there are others where they are not. And they have a compensation model that takes that into consideration when they look at trying to improve scale.
Compensation includes a number of things. Is this looking at just the salary scale? I know in Stafford's case, if you have a master's degree, I think there's a $4,000, a little over $4,000 that goes on top of your salary scale. And almost everybody, my understanding, coming out of Virginia schools has a master's degree. When they
That's a great point, Mr. Sterling. And so one of the things that we have to do when we collect this information from these school divisions, because it's some work to do this, is to take a look at any experience compression that they have in their scale. For example, Henrico tells you on their website that teachers are not necessarily on the step that is equivalent to their years of experience. Other divisions have moved away from step altogether and just look at years of experience and try to make that direct comparison across school divisions. We also need to look at the advanced degree supplements and how that varies across schools. We also need to determine to what extent they've passed on their VRS costs, because that could cause an inflated salary if that has been passed on, and of course we have not passed on all of that percentage to date. The other thing that's important to look at is that state requires that school divisions give teachers a minimum of a 200-day contract. But not all school divisions assign all 200 days of that contract. So we want to look at how many days are being assigned in each one of these divisions.
What does that mean?
Well, for example, state requires a 200-day contract. Teachers might have 192 days assigned, 180 instructional days with students, and then they might have 12 days that are assigned for professional development or teacher work days, and then they have some number of days that are unassigned. They're just taken in consideration for work that would be done outside of the regular school day. But when you make that comparison across divisions, it's important to know how many days are actually assigned within those divisions.
One last
Mr.
thing.
Mildy?
Also, it might be helpful in comparing when you're doing comparables for other divisions that you compare the health insurance plan.
We are going to do that as well. We need to set a goal in that area. This division's goal with health insurance is to be at 110% of the market.
Where are you now?
Well, we need to do an analysis to determine where we are. One of the things that the board did as a part of this budget process is to use a mid-tier pricing structure to have our employer contribution be uniform in the amount that is attached to our mid-tier plan, as opposed to what was in place before, which was an increased employer contribution for the upper tier plan. We have some challenges there, and we're going to be looking at things like, and I hate to use what's in the popular press, but a conscious uncoupling of our medical and dental, because we've got some plans where they're attached, and so an increase in dental costs might drive an overall cost in premium. And we feel like if we could take them apart, and provide more of a menu opportunity for employees, I think we'll do a better job of meeting employee needs, and I think it'll be more cost effective.
Dr. Benson, if I remember when I was on the board, one of the other things that we had to look at, especially as we were changing contracts, some teachers are obviously on a the teachers are all on a 10-month, but then you have SCTC teachers that are on, some of them are on 11 months, some are on 10 months, and a lot of those were adjusted. Some people, if I remember, were grandfathered in because they've been with the school division so long. So, I mean, that's there's a lot to that mix, as you already know.
There absolutely is, and it is very complicated, and you know, it's quite likely that there's going to be some portion that we're going to be able to begin to address without necessarily being able to address all of it. You know, I'm afraid that if we wait until we have the resources potentially to address all of the issues we might encounter, that we won't make any ground. And I do think that there's a model out there someplace, and we may be looking at what's going on in a couple of these other divisions that could help move us in a positive direction, acknowledging that we may very well be in the market at some of these years of experience.
Mm-hmm.
Class size. Well, take just a minute to talk a little bit about class size and the difference between class size and student-teacher ratio, because there is a difference. If you look at the number of teachers that we have in the division and, you know, divide that into the number of students that we have, you're probably going to come out somewhere close to 1 to 15. That's right. Which would be our ratio. And if you're looking at staff members, that would absolutely be correct. That would be factual. It would not necessarily translate into a class size that looks like that. And so we did make a decision as a part of this budget process to increase the average class size in the division by 1. Now, I will tell you right up front, there's no such thing as increasing an average of 1. We reduced the number of teaching positions in the division by 55 positions in that effort. So what that means then is that principals have a reduction in the number of FTEs that are available to them to staff their schools. They are in the process right now of putting together their staffing plans, which we will be reviewing at the division level to see how they're allocating the FTEs that are available to them. Decisions that get made at a school level have an impact on class size. So we want to make sure that folks are looking at all of the options they have available to them in staffing their schools. Scheduling, particularly at the middle and high school level, can have an impact on class size. You might have a class that is the 4th class in a series and have a relatively small number of students that are looking to take that class. You have to make a decision about whether or not that class is going to be offered, realizing that that's a fraction of an FTE that would be used that's going to produce a class size that might be relatively small. That's going to have an impact, potentially someplace else in the master schedule.
We recognize that the 1 in 15 ratio does not necessarily directly translate to class sizes. However, when we then hear about class sizes that are over 30, when the ratio is 1 in 15, and we can't get, and we've asked for years to try to get a really good assessment and description, where are all the teachers? If the ratio is 1 in 15, but you got class size 30, where are these teachers that have 1 or 2? That's the problem, is that ratio of 1 in 15 translating to 31 or more kids in a classroom. That means there's a lot of programs or classes or something or other where teachers have very, very few, even fewer than 1 in 7.
And Mr. Sterling, we are going to help you out with that. We're going to help everybody out with that. The board will be receiving a detailed class size analysis end of September, early October. We're going to look at the range of class sizes. For example, 4th grade in the division as a whole might be from X to Y. We'll look at the frequency, the distribution of class sizes across the division. We'll look at what the mode is, the most frequently occurring number. We'll look at the mean, and then we'll also look at the anomalies, the classes that are very small and the classes that are very large. And we will be asking the principals to provide an explanation as to why that is an anomaly in their school. We'll do the same thing at the secondary level, middle and high school. So the school board has not seen a report that has that level of detail to it before, and quite frankly, my staff has not been asked to generate a report that has that kind of detail in it. And it's going to be some work for them.
Hey, we've asked that numerous times.
In any case, that's an important part of helping everybody understand what class sizes actually look like in the division and where does our staffing go.
That actually leads to on the list of the board's priorities, you had the 3. Class sizes wasn't 1. Was it number 4, or is it subsumed in something? When you put up, here's what the board decided to focus on.
And I forced the board, there were probably, I'm not sure how many was on the list. There were 40 items on their list
40?
for me to work on, yes.
40 priorities.
Well, and that's the thing, is if everything's important, nothing's important, right? So I asked board members to pick 4 things that they felt were important, and we used a very low-tech means to do that. They voted with little sticky dots. And these were the top
And they're
three.
done
And it's not that we're not going to address these other issues. It's just that we need a place to start.
Okay, fair enough.
And as I mentioned earlier, Mr. Snelling, I hope to be here for a while. So we'll be looking to address those things. Now, there is I have just one more thing to talk about before I close, and that is there's a word that begins with R that strikes fear in the heart of superintendents and school boards and maybe Board of Supervisors members. If we could get back to the presentation. Oh, well, I could go there too. No, it's redistricting. So we are in the process of updating our data about student membership and capacity, recognizing that there has been an increase in residential construction starts and we have an enrollment imbalance. And in the last 2 years, we've seen more starts than we saw in the previous 5 years. So we are working with our consultants to update our data. We're working closely with the planning department. There is some prediction element to this, and so we want to be as confident as we can be. The only way you can be absolutely 100% sure is to wait for them to show up. I don't think that's a very good strategy. So we're going to be updating our data this summer, and we plan to share that information with the board in August, and then we should start the process this fall. We have tried to include as many of the new subdivisions and rezoning applications in the mix as possible. We had to pick a cutoff date. The date that we picked was June 30th of this current year, and so that's where we're stopping. And we'll see where we go. The data that was collected the last time around looked like we needed to be focused on elementary and middle schools. The high schools, of course, we've got additions, renovations that are scheduled for them that will take care of some of the challenges that we have there. But I just want the supervisors to be aware that we are moving down that path, and I expect that we will have a recommendation at some point to provide some relief for some of our schools that are appear to be at capacity while leveraging resources that appear to be underutilized within the county. And then finally, we'll go from, remember the earlier slide? A little calmer water, right? Parting of the clouds a little bit. Not that we won't have obstacles. There's some mountains in the back. Just want to point that out. But I am looking forward to the work that we have in front of us, and I am very optimistic and excited, and I think that we're on a really positive path. I think that joint resolution that both boards adopted here recently to look at efficiencies and the opportunity to share some services is a great first step in that direction. And it really is an opportunity to provide a higher level of service, I think, for our community. So I thank you for the opportunity to present to you all this afternoon, and look forward to hopefully a regular appearance if that suits the Board of Supervisors.
Thank you, Dr. Benson. Any other questions?
Oh, yeah. We apologize for interrupting the briefing with questions, but on the facts, I agree. We're not all entitled to our own facts. The staff, our financial staff's been putting together some data for me and the Finance Committee. I think they're sharing that with your staff. If not, I'll make sure that that's shared with you. We posted some of it on our website not too long ago. The important thing, I want to make sure if you see any inaccuracies in any of the data that's being generated and provided to the board and the committee, if there's disagreement in any way, please let us know. You'll have that information as well. So if you can do that. Also, the state engagement plan, we went through this year with everybody talking about, well, not providing enough money, and yet when we look at the data, we're providing one of the largest local increases on a percentage basis, but the state's not. And there never seems to be a recognition. There's got to be some sort of state engagement plan, because they provide you, about half of your funding on an annual basis come from the state. And if they don't keep up, that's where the budget shortfall comes from. Are they working on a state engagement plan?
Well, we're beginning the process of establishing a legislative subcommittee that would have an agenda that I'm certain would have something to do with focus on funding as an element.
All right, thank you.
Let Laura
Go ahead.
On the sheet, it talks about teachers are licensed and then other staff. And then some of them say all. in parentheses?
Some of the information wasn't available to us in short order, and we've begun a process of contacting these divisions because hopefully the information that we collect would be useful to them as well. So we're looking forward to an opportunity to kind of share what we've learned as well. So we have classified staff. So we talk about other kinds of staff in the division. We have classified staff that are non-licensed staff. Licensed staff would include our regular teaching staff, but anybody else that is required to have a license issued by the Commonwealth to do what they do for us in the school division.
Ms. Bromke?
Yes, I just have one last question regarding the R word. It's probably the most difficult thing any superintendent and board members have to go through as elected officials. I'm just curious because, as you know, certain constituents will get behind an issue if they don't want to go to a different school. And how do you propose to, and what's your methodology in guiding the board members with this process that is so fragile?
Well, I think one piece of it is to have a high level of confidence in the data that we're looking at. And so, I understand that there have been some questions about that in the past. So we're trying to make sure that we can have a high level of confidence in the data. It's important to look at options. I don't think anybody likes to be told exactly what to do. And so looking at if there are options that could provide some relief or better use of resources, we need to explore those options. And the public needs an opportunity to weigh in. Our stakeholders need to have an opportunity to weigh in that process. We also need to do a good job of articulating what the challenges are if we don't do something different moving forward. And in terms of utilization of existing space. So we have some work to do. I mean, good communication is key. Time is also, an important factor. Folks need an opportunity to look at the data that we have available, to look at what options, to get out there in the communities and have forums that allow community members to have input in the process before we get to the point of some kind of recommendation coming to the board.
Okay. Thank you.
Again, thank you, Dr. Benson, for coming over, and you said at one of your slides, communication is the key to this, and we believe that this is opening up yet another avenue for us because we have the meetings with the joint finance and budget committees. We have the chair, vice chair, superintendent, county administrator meetings. We're trying to do everything we can to make this communication process work, and I'm certainly confident that you're going down the right path, and we appreciate you coming over, and we're going to continue to do this process.
Thank you. My pleasure.